This is episode 001 of the Bread Over Stones podcast. 5 investments that you can make in your family starting today. Part 1 of 5, Sight and Hearing.
Welcome to the Bread Over Stones podcast, the show that gives grace-driven solutions to heal, unite, and inspire families. Your host is Matthew Morgan, a licensed professional clinical counselor in Ohio, a pastor, and my husband of over 20 years.
And my dad. He loves bringing families together and helping them relate better with one another.
At Bread Over Stones, you'll add to your toolbox as a parent and a spouse in order to improve the way you communicate, discipline, and ultimately show your love for your family.
So welcome to the show.
Greetings. Welcome to Bread Over Stones podcast. This is episode 001, which would make sense that this is the first episode. However, it's actually the second episode because I went ahead and recorded 000 before this, which was just me talking, for those of you who want to get to know me a little bit better. That's what it's for. However, for now, I'm still Matthew Morgan. I'm still a licensed counselor in Central Ohio. And Bread Over Stones is all about those that want grace-driven solutions to heal, unite, and inspire the families. And I wanted to kick this off with a 5-part series because it's a good way to build momentum. And I thought, what a better way than 5 investments that you can make in your family starting today. Now, don't think that I'm going to start passing around the offering plate and asking for change because most likely you're in your car or your desk and you're nowhere around me. So, but it is something that I want you to be able to put into your family, whether your family is you and a spouse or you and a child or some combination of that, or whether it is you and a roommate or whatever. We're open to that, but it's really just how to get along as people. So, how many people remember the marvelous movie Avatar, the one with the blue people, not the animation, although technically it was a lot of computer-generated effects. But anyway, the blue people Avatar from, I believe it was 2009. There were a lot of great things I got out of that theater, mostly just myself on that one. But it did have a few great values. And one of the things that I remember most about that movie is the whole concept of I see you. And if I remember right, the Na'vi language in there, that was one of their key values, was not just a sight of perception, like what's around us. Like I can see things all the time. I see trees, I see traffic, I see, family members, whatever it is. But yet do I really see those things? And I'm amazed, just the number of times that, like when we're driving around, and I apologize to the women out there for this, but typically when we drive, I like to do the driving. We lived in North Dakota when I went to college, and I would tease my wife because we were 5 miles from the South Dakota border, and usually by the time we hit the border, she was already a good way into her nap and ready to just chill, because we knew we had about a 45-minute drive to the next city. So therefore, I drive most of the time. Now, I'm not opposed, obviously, to letting her drive. So sometimes she will, and I'll walk or I'll sit there in the passenger seat and I'll look around. I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't notice this house or this tree or these sheep. Truly, there are sheep where we're driving. So it's a whole new experience. So even though I see it, there are times that I just don't see it. And our family members can be the same way. We can see them and yet not see them. We can get so accustomed to their presence that we forget to take time to get to know them a little bit better. And so I just wanted to, in a few minutes today, just be able to take a look at that whole concept of being able to see our family members. I have put an infographic together, which should be available in the show notes at breadoverstones.com /episode 001. I'm very creative with my titling, so hopefully all of that goes well, and that's up there. So here it is, part one, investing our eyes and our ears into our family. And I did combine the two of those just because they really they stick together a lot. So first of all, when you're dealing with people, you have, of course, what you might hear or what you might see in their lives. And I would encourage you to sit down and just really take a look. See what's going on, hear what's going on. And of course, you're going to hear words. You hear words all the time. I have an 8-year-old son who's absolutely amazing and right now is actually very quiet. But there are times that he loves his words and he uses them in great quantity. And it's always amazing. And he uses them to communicate how he feels. He uses it to communicate what's going on. Sometimes it's thinking through processes. And it's really neat just kind of watch him develop as he goes on. And again, all of us are that way. We use words. We sometimes complain about things. Sometimes we talk about things. Sometimes we just simply make observations. As a husband, one of the things I've had to learn to do, now this is separate from a counselor, but as a husband, one of the things that I really had to learn to do was to be quiet and to listen to the words that my wife was saying. Sometimes that was all she wanted. And I needed to make sure that I changed that enough and changed my own mindset to not be Mr. Fix-It all the time. So we hear words, we see actions out of people. And so many times we have to deal with behaviors. And we call them behaviors because those are actions that reveal our feelings. Sometimes our actions are to storm away from something or to hold on to somebody or to turn to drugs and alcohol or to do dangerous activities like skydiving or car racing or running for public office, But actions accompany our feelings. So, but if we take a look at our family members and a lot of times what we do is we react to those words or to those actions and we don't go any deeper than that. It stays at a very surface level, which is okay sometimes. And I'm not saying we have to do this all the time, but what we need to do is to continue to dig a little bit deeper into that and notice behind words that there is actually a tone that goes with it. Now, those of you who have listened to me prior to this or know me, know that on rare occasions I do belt out a little bit of sarcasm. When I was teaching, I had to teach my kids, usually the first day of class, that I was in fact sarcastic and I wasn't intending to be mean or biting about it, but man, sometimes words get away from me. Tone is not conveyed and I hurt people along the way. And so what I always told them was, hey, if I do this, let me know because I will publicly apologize to the whole class because it's never my intention. It's just a nature of who I am. And I grew up in a very sarcastic family. That really is, I would say, our second language, but a lot of times it's almost our first. Movie quotes are up there as well, as you will find out very quickly. I like to throw in random movie quotes into whatever's going on. So our tone can convey a lot of what's going on, and that's not as easy to pick up on. And in fact, if you've spent any time with online communication, that's one of the big challenges, is that we don't get to hear people's tone. Sometimes we read something that sounds sad and we read it as happy or silly, and vice versa. My wife the other day posted something online that was just remarking at the silliness of what happened, and somebody else read that with a more ominous tone to it. So we have to be careful. And again, in this day of electronic communication where we're not all face-to-face, that can be a big challenge sometimes, but also in our own families. What's going on? What's the tone of that person's voice? Is it more somber? Maybe that's not the time to make that joke, if that's the case. So underneath words is, of course, tone. For those of you who are looking at the eyesight line of things, we have our actions, and underneath our actions are body language. And body language says so much. And it's one of the challenges. I actually do an online therapy practice. And people are always worried about body language. How are we going to pick up on that? Because counselors thrive on body language. We thrive on watching what's going on with somebody. And is their body congruent with what's going on? Those of you who are joining the podcast by audio are just listening to my voice and my inflections. Those of you who are joining by video are probably watching my hands like it's the little bouncy ball from the old sing-along stuff. It's just my nature. I talk with my hands. It's what it is. But body language says a lot. There's a big difference between a courtesy smile and a Duchenne smile, where the eyes smile and a face lights up. And I think underneath we know that. But really, again, trying to take time and pay attention. If somebody's coming to us and seems like they're okay, or maybe they're a little quiet, what's their body language doing? Some common things that I look for is we look for the jaw. And I do that because that's my telltale sign that I'm getting anxious about something, or I'm carrying a little extra stress. My jaw just aches, it just clenches, and I find myself talking through my teeth, and I know that I've got to change that a little bit, or I've at least got to address it and figure out what in the world is going on with this. Some of us, our body language, if we're restless, is we're going to bounce. The knee is going to be up there and moving around. The fingers are going to fidget, right? So what's going on? What's going on below the surface for that? Body language is so important. Watch people's, I'm going to give a little trade secret here. So watch people's feet when you're talking to them. What are their feet doing? See, we get really good sometimes at faking facial expressions. I know how to put on the pretend smile. I can, if I have to, maybe control my hands a little bit, and I don't have to fidget all the time. I can try to keep those under control. But a lot of times we're so focused on that upper body that we forget our feet. And I've been at parties, and it's funny to watch because you'll see a guy and a girl, and they're engaged in a conversation, and he's talking, and she's kind of talking. And I'll scan down, and I'll watch their feet, and her feet are pointed straight at the door away from him. And, I'll lean to the person next to me. I'm like, she's trying to get out of that conversation. So this is what I do. I watch people. So all of that factors in, right? Words and action have tone. They have body language that go with them. And we can only really try to pick up on that stuff if we're being conscious about it. And as we dig down below those things, we find that what the intention of the person that we're talking to, what their intention really is. And so sometimes the words or the actions reveal, okay, what's going on. And how do we really know? We don't. A lot of times we try to pick up on that, or I've seen TV shows when you have the big psychoanalyst and like, oh, this is what this person intended with this. But as a counselor, I have found that I have this really awesome weapon that I get to use to figure out what people are actually thinking. So pay attention to this. You may want to write it down unless you're driving, in which case you might be able to remember it. Ask them. Just ask what's going on, and be very careful that you don't feed back into that. Don't mirror what's going on or exacerbate what's going on. So if my son comes up to me and he's really hyperactive and he's bouncing off the walls, so his body language is very elevated. His words might be elevated. I might say, hey, buddy, you look really excited about what's going on. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that? Right? Or he might be just kind of stressed out a little bit. And so I'll watch him, and I'll see the fidgets are a little bit smaller, and he's maybe a little bit bouncier, or he's gnawing on his lip a little bit. And hey, bud, that you look really anxious. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Tell me what's going on. Right? Or you might say something like, what I'm hearing is that you're really upset about this. We validate the person. You may not agree with them, You may, and there's a really good chance that you won't. Take, for example, if you're at the store, somebody's yelling and screaming about their order being wrong, and it might just be, you know what? You look really upset about that order. Maybe they are. Maybe they're upset about something else that's gone on. Sometimes it's just a question of, what are you trying to say here? What are we trying to communicate? Again, dealing with kids, one of the challenges is they don't always know how to come across. They just simply speak out of whatever their feeling is because they're still developing a lot of this vocabulary out. So your child might come through and something they say could sound really snotty. It could sound really rude. It could be very hurting for us. And rather than feed back into that, the bread over stones way, right? Trying to give good things, trying to give grace, would be, you know what? The way that you said that came across as really angry or really biting or really hurtful. Is that what you meant out of this? And again, we don't know what's going on. Maybe, yeah, you know what I am? I'm really angry at you because blah, blah, blah. Well, that gives us just a chance to bring this angle out and to bring out what's going on. And so notice what we've done. We've gone down from simple words or actions. We've looked at what's behind them with tone and body language. We've looked one more level deeper at what the intention actually is and trying to ferret out that meaning of what the intention is and what's going on inside of them. So we're seeing deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think at that point, we really start to see what is that person's personality. And that is, when we're dealing with family, I think that is one of the most important things is what's going on deep down. Who am I? What's going on? Do I know this person's personality? And so I work with clients a lot of times in this zone. Once we get through all of the extra stuff, it's like, okay, what are our needs actually? One of the books that I will reference 5,000 times probably before I'm done with this podcast, may be an exaggeration, but it might not be. But one of my favorite books is the Love Languages books by Gary Chapman. There are 5, they give 5 love languages that everybody has in degrees. And typically what happens is that we have one of these or a few of these in greater excess than the others. And so in my introduction, I kind of talked about the idea of, my parents' divorce. And one of the things my father taught me, this is before counseling even, before we ever heard of this book, but when he was talking about his and my mom's relationship, it was, well, what does love actually mean? Because one person says, I want more love. The other person says, you know what, I'll go out, I'll work some more hours so I can buy you more things. Right? And sometimes that works. Sometimes that's what the relationship is, and that's what it needs. So Gary Chapman's 5 love languages are receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and physical touch. And again, if nothing else, I would encourage you to go to his website and take the quiz to find out which one of those or which ones of those you and your family members are, because that's important. I would also highly recommend reading the book because the book is it elucidates that on that a lot more. So you can see how that kind of gets a little weirder. So if one person's love language is quality time, and the other person is the receiving gifts or giving gifts, that's the flip side of it, right? So I want more time, so I'm going to go out and work more money to buy gifts. And notice how that all just becomes this cluster mess of a thing. And so learning your partner's love language, learning your family love language, not for the sake of manipulating. That's not what this is about, bread over stones, right? We want good things. We want grace to be given. So if I know that my son's love language is words of affirmation, I'm going to make sure that I lather that on. Even though for me that might be uncomfortable, that might not be who I am, I'm going to do it because I love him and I want him to know more about that. My wife is wonderful about writing letters and all of his lunches through the school year. So knowing that that's something that really is good. So some people, the physical touch, some people just like that. They enjoy that. Some people don't. So be careful. Be careful where you fall at with those. Another area of personality that I love dealing with, and again in my private practice I deal with this, is the idea of the highly sensitive person, the HSP, or the highly sensitive sensation person, the sensation-seeking ones. We, the HSPs, the HSSs, we tend to see things a lot bigger. Our senses are more tuned. We have a greater gift of empathy in a lot of times, but that can be very wearing on us. And of course, that filters out into our intention, into our tone and body language, and our words and actions. But if that's who I am as a person, I have to learn to adjust to that. And the people around me can try to adjust to that. But that factors into it because it has to deal with, it is a genetic difference that has to deal with how we process information. And I encourage you to, if you want to find more about that, Dr. Elaine Aron, Aron, is the lady to go to. She has done most of the modern work, although people are now really taking off studying this a little bit more. Something as simple as introvert and extrovert can make all the difference in the world. Are we introverted? And I'm not saying, this, and those of you who don't know this, and those of you who do, I apologize. But introvert, extrovert is not, do I want to spend all my time alone? There are a lot of people who are very highly functioning introverts, and they go out there. When I was teaching school, I always told my students when we were talking about personality that I was an introvert, and they're like, what? There's no way, because you're out here, you're loud, you're bouncing around the classroom, you're talking to us, which is all true. But at the end of the night, I need to come home and crash and just chill and enjoy the quiet. I'm known for staying up late at night a lot of times because nighttime is quiet, and I'm actually recharging my batteries during that time. Extroverts are all about the energy, and they get more energy from people, but even they need to sometimes back down and chill out a little bit. I always tell people one of the best ways to tell if you're an introvert or an extrovert is to go to camp. Remember camp, for those of you that had to do 6th grade camp or church camp or whatever it is. The introverts, so we spend a week at camp. We're with people all the time. We're working in groups. We're spending time in the cabins, eating lunch with, 200-300 of our closest friends. And at the end of the week, the introverts are like, oh, I cannot wait to go home and crash into my bed and open a book and just chill in the quiet. And the extroverts are like, hey, let's go bowling or whatever it is. So that has a lot to do with what's going on. And we need to embrace that. Whatever our nature is, we're not going to change it. So we have to embrace it and work with it. Otherwise, it's going to come out in a different way. And we can go all the way back to the early times of knowledge, when we talked about 4 different temperament types. And I don't want to get too much into those because I'm hitting my length of time here. But there's the phlegmatics, the sanguines, the cholerics, and the melancholy. Just the nature of our personality. Some of us are very driven. Some of us are very... we want to work with people a lot more, or some of us want to just chill with our ideas and our thoughts, and some of us want to be with our feelings. So all of that factors into who I am. And there's a lot of study on personality out there. You can, of course, take your Myers-Briggs types. There's a lot of variations on the test online, the MBTI, Myers-Briggs type indicator. The Enneagrams are another just fascinating study to be able to look at all of those different ideas. But all of that is really within the realm of psychology. For family work, what I would say to listeners today is to take some time tonight and really see the people that you love and the people that you're trying to connect with. not just looking at them, oh, hey, that person has brown hair, or in my case has almost no hair. It's not about the visual perception. It's about really taking time to see into them. What kind of words and actions do they convey to you and to other people when they're at home? What kind of tone are they conveying with those? What kind of body language are they showing? And learn to read those things to the people around you. Take note. Okay, I know that when, so-and-so is doing this, that this means they're anxious and they need something else. We were doing haircuts last night. I'm going to use my son as an example again. I probably have to pay him $0.25 for royalties for all the stories of him. But we were trying to do haircuts last night, and haircuts are always a little bit of a challenge in our house. Obviously, for me, it doesn't take that long. For him, he has a certain way that he likes it. And so it tends to create some anxiety. And I remember just listening to him last night or the other day, and his tone was elevated and his body language was very erratic and he couldn't sit still and words are just coming faster and faster. Tone is getting more anxious, and it was really easy to look at that moment and say, oh my goodness, he is being a defiant little man right now. But really it was just that he was anxious. It wasn't his intention to be defiant, and it wasn't his intention to upset us. That's not at all what he wants. And had I treated him that way, it probably would have been a pretty big mess. But instead, I went up and I just wrapped my arms around him, wearing his little barber cape, and I'm just held on to him for a little bit. Just gave him one of those, and what I recommend for a lot of people is the 20-second hug. Just held on to him for a little bit and helped him to offload some of that anxiety, because that was his personality. His personality is at those times can be very overwhelming for him. The sensations are very high. The worry goes up. So what he needed was for somebody to help bring him down after that. I saw him. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? See the people around you, see their intention, see their personality. So I thank you for joining me today. We're going to keep going with this one. We've got 4 other investments that we can make. Today was the eyes and the ears. Tomorrow, I think we will do the hands, how we can invest our hands into what we're doing. So again, thank you for letting me into your lives today. And I pray that you will receive the bread of God's grace and that you'll be able to pass that on to other people. Have a great day. Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com for the music at the opening and closing of this show. The opening song was Carefree. The closing one was Cattails. They're both licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. http://creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0.
This show, its host, and its guests are here to provide accurate and helpful educational information. This is not a substitute for personal counseling, and it shouldn't be taken as legal, accounting, medical, or other professional advice.
If you need a professional, you should find one in your area.